Hey guys, it's Jade from Boho Bookworm. Today I'm going to be doing my May wrap-up part 2. While I tell you about the books that I read in the second half of May, I'm going to be cooking a spaghetti bolognese in the slow cooker. So I hope you enjoy the recipe. If you want to see the ingredients, they're listed in the description box down below, as are the books that I read throughout the second half of May. I'm going to start by talking about Cross Her Heart by Sarah Pinborough. Sarah Pinborough wrote one of my absolute favourite reads of 2017. It was fantastic. Behind Her Eyes just blew me away. While I tell you about this book, I'm going to be chopping up an onion and some garlic to go into my slow cooker. About 4 cloves of garlic and 1 onion. So Cross Her Heart is about 3 women. We have Lisa, this really overprotective mother. She's got a terrible past. She's always very anxious and looking over her shoulder. We also have her daughter, Ava, this self-obsessed hormonal teenager, and she's just started to speak to this stranger online and no one else knows about him. And then we have Lisa's best friend, Marilyn, who she knows from work. So the book is told from all of these women's points of views. It really is the kind of book that you have to stay very focused with because it can lose you extremely quickly. It's a bloody confusing book, if I do say so myself. Whew. Onions always make me cry. Ha. All of these characters are really flawed and very unreliable. Oh, fuck this. There we go, much better. Sarah Pinborough really knows how to pull the rug out from underneath you. I wouldn't say I was as enamored by this book as I was with her previous book, Behind Her Eyes. It's different on every single level. Can you guys take me seriously like this? Cross Her Heart starts off really slowly to set the scene, but then it really kicks off. It's full of suspense. And it's full of these underlying messages that are really important, like just how careful we need to be on social media. It's a very, very dark book, and deeply disturbing in some levels, and I would definitely say there are major trigger warnings for things like domestic violence, sexual abuse, and drugs. Overall, I gave it a 4-star review, and I honestly loved it. It was just very different. It didn't have that out of this realm element that Behind Her Eyes had, but I enjoyed that because, you know, I'm not much of a fantasy reader, as you know, so I enjoyed that it was more believable in every level of the book, where, you know, I really thoroughly did enjoy Behind Her Eyes. I gave it, I think, a 5-star review, and I thought it was bloody excellent, but it's not very often that I'll find a sci-fi, paranormal, fantasy book that good, like Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. I was amazed at how much I loved it because to me it's not believable. So yeah, I enjoyed that this book was believable, but as I said, I just wasn't as enamored with it as I was with Behind Her Eyes. I hate onions. Oh, I love them, but boy, golly god. Going on to something a little bit easier now, my garlic. So hopefully the waterworks will stop. The next book that I'm going to talk about is The Legacy by Yrsa Sigurdardottir, and this is the first book in a new series. I don't know what took me so long to read this book because honestly, I've had it on my shelf for well over a year. I think it got sent to me by the publisher, and I always said, oh yeah, I'll get around to it. I wasn't a big fan of the cover. It didn't sound like something I'd really enjoy, but in the past year, I've really started to really enjoy crime fiction a lot more than I did before. I love understanding and just getting into the police procedures a bit more and how they handle investigations. So I picked this up. It blew me away. This is about a young girl who is hiding under her bed the night that her mother is murdered, so she becomes a crucial witness in their investigation to find the murderer, but she's so traumatized and she's not cooperating with the police as they question her. So as these murders continue, she's their only hope. This book was translated from Icelandic and it's set in Reykjavik. I really feel like it was a really ballsy move from this author to do a crime novel set in Reykjavik, because Iceland itself has one of the lowest crime ratings in the world. Yet I feel like this story was so authentic and believable. From the crime itself to the inexperienced police that were just under so much stress, like having to deal with this investigation, that they never had that kind of investigation before. They didn't really know what the hell they were doing. The characters were super fleshed out, and I honestly really loved it. It's a very dark and descriptive Nordic noir with some grotesque murder scenes using common household appliances as the murder weapons. So you'll never look at certain things the same way again, but that said, it's very vivid without having to be overly gory, which I really appreciated. Honestly, I feel like this is one of the better crime novels that I've read, and I'm definitely going to be continuing with the series. I'm loving getting into, you know, more translated fiction, so yeah, really, really impressed with it, and I wish I'd read it sooner, to be honest. Alright, so now you're going to do about a teaspoon of olive oil in a pan, heat that up, and then you're going to put your garlic and onion in here and cook it for about 7 minutes until it's translucent, and then you're going to transfer it to your slow cooker. So while I do this, I'm going to talk to you about The Exorcist, which is the next book I finished by William Peter Blatty. Now, I feel like this book was written well ahead of its time. His writing is stunning. I don't know why I wasn't really expecting much from William Peter Blatty's writing. I guess I just thought that because it was horror, it couldn't possibly be any good, and I mean, I was so pleasantly surprised. I'm fairly certain most of us know the story about The Exorcist by now. It's about a 12-year-old girl who she gets possessed, and no one believes her mother when she tries to get help, so she ends up getting all these plausible excuses, like all these psychological problems that it could possibly be, instead of a sorry, I just need to put the rest of this in. Instead of an exorcism. So, instead of a possession. So when people do finally start to believe her that her daughter is possessed, it is already too late. The terrifying aspect of this book was ruined for me by that silly old comedy movie, Scary Movie. It basically rips off every scary scene in the book. There are a few other things about it that really irked me too, like, for instance, was it really normal for kids in the 70s to play with Ouija boards? Because honestly, to me, that's not normal at all. We all know not to play with them. Furthermore, I like to think I have a really vivid imagination, but I cannot deny that I think I prefer horror movies to books, because I prefer that visual aspect of them. It just brings something so much creepier to it that I feel that books lack, like the special effects, the stage makeup, and even the creepy sounds in the movies just adds to that level that I just feel like a book can't do. The one fascinating element I did find about the book, though, was that you kind of have to decide for yourself if Regan, the girl, is possessed or not, because you don't have those visual aspects that you get in the movie. I mean, in the movie it's extremely clear that this girl is possessed because she just looks demonic, but in the book you're only going on the description, and yes, it could very easily be a psychological issue. So it's a very fascinating catch-22, and I think it played out really well, and I think it would be a very interesting thing to have open to discussion. I do have to warn people, though, before they go into reading The Exorcist, that if a book like Lolita was too much for you, then steer far, far away from The Exorcist, because it does sexualize a child, and it has some pretty gruesome scenes. Like, all I'm saying is that crucifix scene was disturbing and disgusting. I listened to it on Audible, and it was the 40th anniversary edition, narrated by the late William Peter Blatty himself, and it was excellent. His voice is just so captivating, and he just thrives on that evilness of putting on the demon's voice and that crazy laughter. It was beautifully done, and it was a performance and an art. So overall, I gave this book a 3 stars, purely for the fact that the silly movie, Scary Movie, completely ruined it for me. But I think if I hadn't seen that, maybe I would have enjoyed it a little bit more. But yeah, everything was just, it was ripped off for me, and every time one of the scary scenes happened, I just couldn't help but laugh and remember the movie, you know, that's the only images in my head, so unfortunately it just got ruined. Alright, so now I've put the onions and garlic into the slow cooker, and I am just heating up the oil on the same pan, and I'm going to put my mince in to brown. So I'm going to do that quickly, and then I'm going to tell you about the next book I read, which was The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. So as you can see, I read some classics this month, and some horror-y classics. So yeah, I like to think that my reading is getting a bit more explorative, which is really fun, like kind of breaking away from my usual always reading thrillers. So The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson is about a doctor who decides to set up a kind of science experiment to try and find out if there's evidence of a haunting in Hill House. So he invites 3 guests over to the house for a week to just see if they can pick anything up. He invites Theodora, his assistant, he invites Luke, the heir to Hill House, and he invites Eleanor, this really fragile woman who has a history with poltergeists. Honestly, I neither loved nor hated this book. It was published in 1959, and I do believe that Shirley Jackson's writing is timeless. She creates this perfect brooding tone for her books and sets this really darkly atmospheric scene. I really do feel like there's this certain oddness that she gives the relationships between her characters in every book of hers that I've read, and I find it really interesting and enjoyable to experience that. And there's this huge psychological component to the book revolving around fear. And the book is definitely filled with a lot of mystery and intrigue. It starts off really slowly, and then we can feel the tension start to build as things start to get a little bit more creepy and weird in the house, because at first you're not really sure if it's going to go down that paranormal aspect, and like that paranormal way or not. So it's very interesting to watch it develop. Overall though, I really do feel like this book paled in comparison to her other book that I've read, We Have Always Lived in the Castle. I was never really fully engaged in the story, but that said, I really did find it enjoyable. There were definitely a few eerie moments, but I really feel like there's this false reputation about it being one of the scariest books of its time. So yeah, I think a fair rating for this one was definitely 3 stars. Alrighty, oh, my finger's in the bloody way. So now you have taken the mince out and you've put it in the slow cooker with the garlic and onion, and now you're just getting a little bit of red wine, and you're going to just cook all the shit off the bottom of this pan, just scrape it off, and then you're going to dunk all of this into the slow cooker, which so far looks like that. I am going to turn it up onto a high heat in a second. Just not at the moment because I don't want it to cook too much, but so like high heat you can have it on for about 6 hours, 5-6 hours. Low heat more for like 8 hours. So because it's already about 1:30, I need to start cooking very quickly. So I'm just going to let this come up to a bit of a boil, not like bubble, but just a little bit of a boil, and then I'm going to put it into the slow cooker. And I am going to talk to you about Emma in the Night by Wendy Walker, which I finished, and I have spoken about it before, so if you want to skip ahead, you can do so. I'm just going to briefly mention my thoughts and tell you what it's about. It is about 2 sisters from a dysfunctional family, and they go missing. So, many years later, one of them returns, but only one of them, and she starts to retell her stories to a forensic psychologist about where she's been, how she escaped. So the book's told from 2 points of view. It's told from the forensic psychologist Abby, and it's also told from the sister who returned, called Cass. Now, I really don't think it's much of a surprise, as if you watch my videos you would have seen this already, but I was not a fan of this novel whatsoever. I didn't connect with the author's style of writing at all. I found her writing to be very clinical and mechanic. The dialogue wasn't believable. It didn't flow for me at all. Oh yep, and then you go and drop the wooden spoon all over your white dress, which is great, really. Alright, and now you're going to pour in 2 cans of diced tomatoes. Followed by some tomato paste, and you can decide how much you want to put in for yourself depending on how tomatoey you like it. Mark loves it super tomatoey, so I put in half of this entire jar. Alrighty, then you're going to do about 2 teaspoons of Worcestershire sauce, followed by a sprinkling of oregano leaves. Where's the oregano leaves? Yum yum. And you can put in about 3 dried bay leaves because they add a lot of lovely flavour. And now for my favourite part, some chili flakes, because I love a bit of spice. Yum yum. Go crazy here because if you like chili, because it's amazing. And then you're gonna just shove in some salt and pepper and ignore Mark's beers. Alright, so that's about it for now. It's going to cook for a few hours, and then I'm going to put in some peas and some carrots and a little bit of just some veggies just to make it a bit more filling, and I'll do the spaghetti a bit later on. So let me finish talking to you about Emma in the Night by Wendy Walker, which was very disappointing. But I have just heard about some of her other books and they sound very good, so I'm not sure if I'm ready for her writing again just yet because it really did irk me, but I will be picking her up again in the future. I'll give her another go. I really just felt like the author was showing and not telling us most of the story. It was a lot about narcissism, and while I did feel like it was very interesting to learn more about narcissistic personality disorder, it just seemed like more of an essay about the disorder rather than showing it through a fleshed out main character. There was just a lot of filler in this book, and it was so random at times that it just got ridiculous, and it just made me want to laugh. And to be very honest with you, I always do that. I keep turning my bloody dishwasher on even though I never use it. I was laughing sometimes at how silly it was and ridiculous because it was just full of so much shit. And it wasn't a thriller at all. It had little sprinkles of suspense, but that was about it. Why I decided to give this book 2 stars, and what saved it for me, however, was the unpredictability of it, because it was... I had no idea where it was going to go or what was going to happen. I was always second guessing in my theories because everyone is a suspect, and it's just it's a very questionable novel. It's just weird. The overall twist I definitely didn't see coming, so in ways it redeemed itself, but it just wasn't enough to have me thoroughly enjoy it. Time to relax. So I did also DNF 2 books this month. I DNF'd Uprooted by Naomi Novik. It's, I mentioned earlier in this video that I'm just not the biggest fan of fantasy, and another thing I'm not really a big fan of is YA, so this was both of those things combined. I kind of felt like it was a bit of a Beauty and the Beast kind of retelling. I don't really know. It's like this girl from a small little village, and she gets taken off by this dragon dude, and I don't know, I just didn't enjoy it. I really wanted to. I like the idea of darker fairy tales, but no, I don't know, just go to someone else if you're thinking about reading this book, because I'm not going to do it justice. The other book, sadly, that I DNF'd was The Doll Funeral by Kate Hammer, and this is a thriller, which is very surprising that I DNF'd it, but it also had a bit of a fantasy kind of element to it, and I just wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't connecting to the story. It's about this little girl who finds out that she's adopted on her birthday, and I think that there's supposed to be this big thing about domestic abuse and stuff like that, but the novel just lost me. I didn't like it at all, so yeah, they're the 2 I DNF'd, and later on I will talk to you about The Perfect Mother by Aimee Molloy, the last book that I finished in the month of May, and I will do that when I have more stuff to throw into the slow cooker. The nice thing about a slow cooker is once it's on, you can just chill out. So Mark's about to come back from riding his Harley for a bit. So let's see what he thinks when he walks in the door of the smell of my cooking. Does it smell good?
Fuck yeah.
Yeah?
Mmm.
Can
we eat it now?
No, gotta cook for ages, Badge. How was your ride?
Fucking awesome.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's like a few hours later. It's dark outside. Mark's gone for a run. I'm obviously having a glass of wine because I'm still against exercising. But dinner just smells divine. And now I'm going to just chop up some carrots and talk to you about The Perfect Mother by Aimee Molloy, which I just finished reading at the end of May. This book is about a group of mothers, and they start a group called the May Mothers. So they get together and they it's like a support group about sharing their tips and advice on their pregnancies and their babies, their newborns and stuff, and just what they do to cope about sleep deprivation and stuff. So it sounds pretty normal. And one night they decide to let their hair down, leave the babies at home. They're going to go out and have some fun, but they don't realise that things are about to go drastically wrong when one of the babies goes missing from his crib while they're out. So let's be honest, the plot of this novel is so chilling. I mean, it's every mother's worst nightmare. It's just so addictive because you're desperate to find out what happened to this little baby. I definitely think that this is one of the best domestic thrillers that I've read so far this year. It's so different from the normal type of plot. It's not centered around a husband and wife. It's more so about these women in this group of mothers, and they've all got different secrets and, you know, their own history and stories, but they're all drawn together with this passion for babies and for just wanting to help find this little boy that's missing. It is told from multiple points of views from all the different women in this group, and in the beginning I did find it a little bit hard to keep track of everyone and their different stories and their partners and just everything that you had to kind of figure out, but eventually I got used to it and it was great. And the book itself, it gave me a lot of information about becoming a mother. I don't know how I'm going to do it one day myself because there's a lot to learn. So yeah, this book is a good lesson of all the things you need to know about being a mum. It all felt very authentic to me. The mother's stress about being a first-time mum and everything they have to go through. I had heard initially that this book would be great for fans of B.A. Paris, who wrote Behind Closed Doors, and I hadn't read that book before, but I'm about to finish it now, and I can definitely say I agree. I've also heard fans of Liane Moriarty and J.T. Ellison's Lie to Me would enjoy it too, and I do like Liane Moriarty, not some of her other books. Like, I just finished Truly Madly Guilty, which I wasn't a fan of, but I did enjoy Lie to Me by J.T. Ellison, and yes, this book, The Perfect Mothers, is almost on par with it. I don't think it's quite as good as that to me, but it's pretty damn great. One of the best books I've read this year, definitely. Alright, now we're just popping in some carrots and it's going to be delicious. Oh, smells so divine. You're not really supposed to give it a stir, but I just want to coat the carrots so that they cook under the sauce. So if I put the carrots in too soon, they'd get too soft and soggy for 5 hours, so I just like to put them in a little bit later. This book is a really fun and entertaining read, but there's another element to it that I think is really important to keep in mind, and that is that it really does portray this societal pressure that women have. You know, if we're a mum and you go out and you have fun, then you're going to be judged. There's a lot of judgment, even if it comes to breastfeeding or no matter what you do, there's a lot of pressures about being a mum, and it's all in this book. So even though this is a really fun and entertaining thriller, it's got that side of it too, and you kind of have to decide how you want to view it. Can you view it from both ways? Do you just want it to be a fun read? Or do you see that side of it and just see how actually deep this novel can get? I definitely do feel like The Perfect Mother is very relevant in today's world, trying to let mothers know that they don't need to be that elusive, perfect mother. No one is perfect, and it's a very important message to kind of take away from this book, I think. Furthermore, I think that this book, the ending of it was extremely rich and very entertaining. It was incredibly disturbing, as is the problem with a lot of thrillers these days. I felt like the ending was just a touch rushed. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I didn't see the twist coming, which I definitely enjoy because I've been getting better at these twists as I've been reading more thrillers. So overall, I really enjoyed it. Let me know if you've read any of the books I spoke about in this video and what you're planning on reading throughout the month of June. I hope you're all really well and I look forward to hearing from you. Have a good day. Bye!